Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today we continue the BusyWorks Beats podcast. And today we have an extremely difficult question because I don't take this lightly and I don't want to use my influence or my persuasion skills to make anyone quit their job or do something that they would ever regret. So firstly, I want to disclaim this video by saying do not make dramatic decisions in life. When it comes to your work, when it comes to your business, there's no reason to make a dramatic change. Okay, so firstly, what we want to accomplish here is map out the variables of quitting your job, when to quit, should people quit, what's the opportunity in music, because there's so many things I have to teach you guys. But the first thing is that a lot of people glamorize music because what they're doing is establishing a brand, and brands are very glamorous most of the time. So it's the same thing with movie actors and different things like that. It's a very show. It's called the show music business, and it's called the show business. And so a lot of people forget about that entertaining part. And a lot of the music industry is about entertainment more than it is about reality. So I don't want to feed people false narratives. I don't want to influence people to make dumb decisions. What I'm going to do is give you a skill set today in order to make better judgment and better decisions. No one knows the future, but what you can do is look at the past and your analytics to make better decisions moving forward. So firstly, let's get into the variables of quitting your job, so to speak. Okay, so let's map out the things that we have to pay attention to in making this decision. Firstly, it's time value. What is the value per hour? Okay, value per hour of your time currently. This could be based on your skill set. It could be based on what you're paid per your time at your job. Okay, so this is called time value. The next thing we need to understand is runway. A lot of people who are starting businesses, they think you could just start a business and make all this profit right away. And I could tell you, you're going to spend a lot more time than you are in the beginning. You're going to spend a lot more time than you have money. And that's because you have to build up a reputation. You have to build up a brand. You have to build and verify your business model. And you have to prove that it works. You know, a business is really a hypothesis put into action. You know, the same way we do experiments, you have to start with a hypothesis and then go prove your hypothesis. Well, your business in the beginning, you're starting to prove a hypothesis. You haven't proven it correct just yet. And so as you're proving it correct, you're going in to chisel out your business model, where money's made, where profit is made. You know, revenue and profit are two different things. Okay, so you need what's called runway. Nextly, we need proof of concept. And I just kind of explained what that is. You need to prove to yourself and to your business that the time you spend in your business correlates to actual value creation. And value creation leads to the money side of things. A lot of people think you just get money for doing random activities, but in reality, you have to correlate which activities generate value for other people. When people receive value, they want to reciprocate with this thing they call money, a medium of exchange. Okay, so nextly, we need to talk about time cost. Time cost is, if you're paid, let's say $50 an hour, being a doctor or some kind of healthcare professional, and then you are challenged with another position, but the value of that position is $20 an hour. If you were to do that $20 an hour task as a $50 an hour healthcare professional, you're actually losing $30 an hour. Okay, and the first rule of investment is to not lose money. And so time cost is very important in this conversation, making this decision, because this will help you decide when to jump ship or when to move into that new job. Because everybody thinks you could just quit today and start tomorrow and be profitable and super successful. That's not how business works. It's like a seed in the ground, and seeds take time to germinate and gestate, I should say. And so just like a child takes time in the womb, seeds take time in the ground. It has to receive nutrients from the soil, and that soil will go to grow that seed into a plant. And so the same thing with your business. You have to sow the seed of a mustard seed, the size of a mustard seed, and it will turn into a big plant, but you have to focus on it and you have to believe in your concept, but you have to prove it as well. So we're going to get into all these concepts. The next thing we need to focus on, I guess, is just belief. Okay, and motivation, I'll say. Motivation, belief, I kind of put all these into one. And some people will call this your why or your purpose or your passion, some people call it. Instead of passion, we'll say desire, because passion is a suffering. If you look up the definition of passion, it means to suffer. That's a different process. Okay, so let's start at the top of this chain. Let's start at time value. So let's use $20 an hour as an average kind of median here. We're going to put $20 an hour for job number one. Okay, and then for the music job, we're going to say, I'm going to say a job for now, but let's just say in music, we have to determine the actual value per hour. Now, this is harder to do because you have to divide the time you spend into the value that you receive in exchange. So for example, at your job, you could work, let's say you work 5 hours a day. Okay, so 5 hours a day, and you work 5 days a week. Okay, so what we're going to do is calculate the total. So if it's $20 an hour, 5 hours a day, that's $100 per day. times 5. That means your week equals 500. Okay, so that's for the per the week. And then per the month, let's say it's 500 times 4. So let's write this out. 500 times 4 is the month, and that will give you 2,000 for that specific month. Now, the reason I'm doing in monthly chunks is because we have to understand music is not this formulaic, predictable machine. Okay, so it's not like a typical job where you clock in, you clock out, and you get paid for your time. It's a lot different. Okay, so in music, where you're an entrepreneur, you're a solopreneur, you're a freelancer, whatever your job or your entry into music is, there's a lot of entries. There's no one way. We need to calculate the dollars per hour. So let's just put X here as a variable. Okay, now the reason we're doing this is because we need to reverse engineer the value. So let's start with the monthly income. So in the beginning, this is why a lot of people say your monthly income needs to match the job income per month, and this needs to occur for 5 to 6 months to prove your hypothesis. Okay, so this is what we're talking about here. So let's just say in music, you're making $1,500 per the month, whether that's YouTube revenue, whether that's selling beats online, whether that's doing recording services, whatever it is. Let's just say it's $1,500 per the month. Okay, so this is already a high value because in the beginning, it will take time to get to this point. And a lot of people want to jump straight into income and wealth. That does not happen. Wealth comes from transactions over time. In order to create a transaction, it requires trust. In order to build trust, it takes time. Okay, you don't just meet people off the street and, become married off the street. So you have to build trust. The same thing with your customers. You have to build trust. It takes time. So this is the element that a lot of people skip out on, is overlooking time. So let's go back to, and also the joy factor. We're going to add this in as a variable because the joy factor could allow somebody to take less pay, but be more satisfied with the work. Okay, so let's add this as like an asterisk variable. Now we're going to go back to the music income. Let's say it's $1,500 per month. We need to divide this by 4. I should use a number that's divisible by 4. This will make this so much easier. Let's say $1,600 a month. Let's divide that by 4. Let's say this person makes $400 a week. Let me see here. Pull this over here. So that would be $400 a week. Okay, and now we can reverse engineer the actual dollar per hour. So let's go in. Now the difference is, here's where now most people would stop here. They say, okay, if music isn't making $2,000 a month, then they don't need to switch over their career style or the career path. But here's the confusion, okay, because a lot of people don't calculate the time they spend into the music. So let's say you're going back and you work 7 days a week this time. So 7 days a week, but you work a lot less. So it's not 5 hours a day on music specifically, because in the beginning, you can't spend the same amount of time you do in music that you do on your job. So let's say you work 5 hours a day in this $20 an hour job, and that leaves you with, you sleep for 8 hours, that's 13. So you have 11 extra hours to do stuff. Okay. So, I'm including rest and kind of arbitrary time in there. So let's say you have 2 hours per day that you could dedicate to music. Okay. On top of your current work. So let's say 2 hours per day, and that's 7 days a week. Okay. Not skipping any days because you're passionate about this. Let's just say it's 7 days a week. So now that we're changing out these variables, it's not the same per hour value. Okay, so now we need to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, if someone's making $1,600 the month, $400 in the week, and they work for 7 days, we need to divide 400 by 7. So 400 divided by 7. Let me pull out my magic calculator, aka my phone, because I'm not doing mental math here. So 400 divided by 7 gives us $57. Okay, per. Okay, and let's do 57. Okay, and that's per day. Okay, so this is per the day. And now we need to divide the day by how many hours we spend per day. Okay, so in this case, 57 divided by the 2 hours that somebody would spend. So that gives us $28.50. Okay, so here's what makes this make mathematical sense on paper. So now you can say, okay, if someone's spending 2 hours a day and that hour is worth $28.50, that's more than the $20 at the job. So you're actually keeping yourself stuck by not taking the higher value per hour job. Now, here's the variable, and this is why I wanted to be so careful with this video. The variable here is that in entrepreneurship, in music industry specifically, when there's no predictable income, you don't know when there's downturns. You don't know when there's times that the cash flow will change up. So I don't want people to rely on this number. Just because you made this here does not mean you'll make it later in 6 months from now. When you're growing in the beginning, it's different than year 2, than year 4, than year 8. Okay, I've been in this for 8+ years. It's a lot different in the beginning when you're first getting started, when you have geometric growth versus year 4, year 6, year 8. You have different priorities, different focuses. And so what I want you guys to understand is that let's keep this equation going, but let's push this even further. And this is what I want to do with the BusyWorks Beats podcast, is not only give you music production tips. I think that's great. But, I've been doing this for years with my podcast. It's called Giving Game, hashtag Giving Game. I even had what's called a no fluff series where I just didn't sugarcoat anything and I gave it to you guys straight. So let's continue this, because a lot of people, they quit at this equation. So we need to also calculate, let's keep this going. Okay. So let's say job number 1, which is the job in question. Okay. So that makes what? $2,000 per the month. And then usually you're on a yearly contract. So let's say 12 times 2,000. Now this is guaranteed because you're clocked in. You're selling time. So 12 times 2,000 would give you 24,000 for that year. Now that's on paper. Okay. Assuming that there's no sick hours and all that type of stuff. We have to assume a lot of stuff for this equation. Now the music job in this case, or entrepreneurship in general, does not mean you're going to make the same amount just because you're spending a certain amount of time. This just means you're correlating time to a value. Okay, the time spent. It doesn't always mean that the time you spend will always correlate to value creation. There's times where you might make dud products or terrible, service, and that value could go down or it could go up. I don't want to discourage folks. Okay, but my point is, if a business can grow, that means your time, that means your value per time actually increases over time. Because if the business didn't grow and the time you spend is the same, then that means you're not increasing your value that you create through skill sets and different knowledge and education. And that's why I teach at busyworksbeats.com/premium. In order to raise your income, if you're spending the same amount of time, you need to have more skills and deliver more value. And the way you do that is through skill sets. And you have to learn these skill sets. That's what busyworksbeats.com/premium is for. So for example, let's continue this example. Let's say on the music side, you're making $1,600 a month. And that's where you start to contemplate, should you quit your current job? Okay, so now we have $1,600 per month. Now let's keep this calculator going. Let's keep this going. So let's say the next month you make, let's say this is month, let's just start at $1,600 a month. Okay, now this is month 12 into the actual business. So technically it was pennies up until this point. So you need to divide that value by itself, but I don't want to make this complicated. So let's just start this equation at $1,600 a month. It does not mean you will make this much when you first start in music. I just want to make that very clear. I'm doing this for a mathematical example only. So let's say month 2 is 2,000. Okay, let's say month 3 is, let's say you're getting excited. So now the business is growing. Now it's at 4,000. It doubled. Let's say month 5, it goes to 4,500. And then what month are we? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, month 5. Now let's say it goes to, let me see here. Let's say it goes to 6. Okay, now you have a downturn. Now, most people think their business is just going to go up, 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 and never go down. Okay, it's a novice belief. It's not impossible, but it's very improbable. Okay, so let's say it goes down, okay, to 5,500, and it starts freaking the person out, and they start operating in fear. Okay, and then now it moves even further down because they're operating out of fear. They're not doing big, bold moves anymore. They're using fear to drive. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We need 5 more months. So I'm just going to create values per the month. And let's say they have a stagnation period where they can't grow the business. Okay, and the stagnation period is very common. Okay, now it's a certain time of the year where people aren't paying attention to the internet. Let's say this goes down to even back to where they started or below from where they started, which is 1,200 in this case. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We need 2 more months. And let's say this month is 800 and people are questioning their existence at this point. And then it goes back up to, let's say, 2,000 for that last month. So now we need to calculate all these values and divide it by 12. Business is not this predictable fortune cookie machine. It's as much as people make it out to seem this way and that you can make money super fast without ever spending money or doing anything, it's just a lie that they're selling you to sell something else. So 1,600, let's kind of do some quick math. So once you add up all these values, you get 38,500 for the first year. Now this is revenue. This is before taxes. This is before expenses. This is before a lot of stuff that people don't calculate into their equation. So getting that 38,000 doesn't mean you didn't spend marketing dollars, or doesn't mean you spent time doing stuff that didn't have a value, which actually cost you money because now you turned down the actual value that you could have spent somewhere else. So that's called time cost. So in this case, let's say your expenses were 10,000 because you spent it on whether that's advertising, whether that's paying influencers, whether that's operational costs, whether that's whatever. Okay, so and then you also have more things called taxes. Okay, in this case, so tax, divide this by, let's say 28,000 divided by 2. Really, you could divide it by 2 to be safe. So even though this person is making, what is this, 28.5, and then divided by 2, so you're basically left with, let's just say 14, roughly. Okay. Now I know I'm exaggerating on the value of the tax, but a lot of people don't put enough aside and don't understand how to pay themselves through payroll. Okay. So in this case, this person's really only making 14,000 compared to the 24,000 they're making after taxes through their job. So in this case, financially speaking, the job is actually making more than this music business at this specific point. So to jump ship wouldn't make true sense, even though the time per value is higher. Okay, because you need what's called runway. Now, the next value is runway. In my opinion, you need 6 months of runway before you jump into business, because again, with business, you're trying to prove a hypothesis. You don't know when downturns will occur. And in business, you need cash flow. You need cash on hand to spend for expenses. Okay. And so I know a lot of people are teaching getting funding and credit cards and all this type of stuff for your music business. Do not do that. I swear on every God that you guys exist in, do not use credit cards and credit to build your business. I will say this 1,000 times. Do not use credit cards. Do not use credit. Do not use anything of leverage, loans, whatever it is, whatever the financial instrument is to build your music business, unless you're extremely savvy with that. And I mean, going to Harvard type savvy, go about finance. Do not do it. Okay. There's so many reasons why. I don't want to bore you guys to tears. I just think it's the biggest lie people sell you because they want to get a cut from you making foolish decisions. Okay. So moving into this, we need to understand that you need to have that runway in this case. So if we would calculate those 6 months out, truly, this is only half. Okay. So the runway would be in this case, 7,000 after all those expenses. So that would really equate to 3 months of your job's time. So really you would have to do double, which is 12 months of the music stuff to have 6 months of the current job value. So what I'm getting those values from is, okay, if this is the after all the expenses value, 14,000, and we're assuming when I say 6 months, most people think I'm talking about 6 months of the music business. I'm talking about 6 months of your current job's value. So in that case, if the current value of the month is 2,000, the music business needs to generate 12,000 before you even begin to think about switching careers. Okay. Because this runway is needed for all the cash flow. Like I said, this year could cost 10,000. So if you, if the year costs 10,000, you're left with 2,000, and that's before revenue. I'm trying not to get too complex, but this is the value that you need to save in this case. If that job made $2,000 a month, you need to save 6 months before you even begin to think about jumping into a new career. Okay. I want to make that extremely clear because you need what's called runway, and runway is because in business, you have expenses. At a job, you don't have expenses for most jobs. You're not going out of your pocket for your job. Your employer is, and that's why they're your employers, because they take a lot of risks that you're not taking. So in entrepreneurship, you have a lot of out-of-pocket costs that people don't consider. And there's also costs that you can't even see yet because you don't know when you scale your operations or what's going to break. You need somebody to come fix. There's a lot of expenses that you can't even calculate just yet because you haven't been in business. So a lot of people overlook the runway concept. And this is one of those things that if you're not taught it, you won't understand it until you're in business. But runway is super important for any business, again, because you're trying to prove a concept. Now, the next concept is more so in practice, but in the beginning, people have so much belief in their idea, but they haven't proven their idea. It doesn't mean your idea won't work if it didn't work just yet. It just means we need to look at the actual analytics. If I say my YouTube video is going to pop off and get millions of views, and I have a terrible thumbnail, I didn't edit, I left a bunch of stuff in the video that shouldn't be in there, it's a bunch of filler, and my audio is terrible, but I still believe that it's going to go number one. It's not impossible, but it's improbable because the system works a very different way. It has different values and different things. So if I'm just ignoring the system and all the things that work within the system, and I just am putting this blind faith based on nothingness into that YouTube video, it's almost insanity because I'm basing that off of pure nothingness. I think what people mix up when they talk about faith is actually, believing in the things that are unseen. But the thing about faith is that in order to have faith you need to see stuff that already happened. Like, for example, in order for people to have faith in Jesus Christ, they had to see that he did miracles. In order to have faith in God, you had to see that God freed all these people and did great things and built the universe. You had to see the existence of stuff before you just blindly believed in something. And so the same thing with ourselves. We need to prove ourselves first. We need to build our merit in something before we deserve anything. If you look at the definition for deserve, it means to build through merit. It means to earn through merit. So you need to earn your right to earn income in this music business. And the way you do that is by creating real proof. What have you created? What value have you generated? How have you helped other people? How have you scaled an operation or a product? How many units have you sold? And I mean units as in not just music units, but merchandise and different things like that, different products. And so I want people to start thinking a lot bigger, but also get scientific with it. And just instead of putting so much pressure on yourself in your business, consider it a hypothesis that you have to prove right. It's like saying, hey, my hypothesis is that the sky is actually a big ocean. Well, if I believe that, I have to go prove it by going to the sky, touching it, and figuring out what the chemical makeup of the sky is, and come back and decide, is that truly the ocean that we're seeing, or is it just, the blue rays and the frequencies that we see? Okay, that's a hypothesis. So it sounds bodacious. It could be true. It could be false. I don't know until I go out and prove it. I think a lot of people skip this step and they live in this fantasy land that's actually destroying their success because they're not basing their success off of anything tangible and they can't repeat the process. If everything's just this magical process, how do you repeat a magical process that you don't know the process of creating? Okay, so that's called proof of concept. The next variable that we have to take into account is called time cost. Now, there's a lot of activity you're going to be doing in business that does not result into actual value. And so we need to measure the things that we're doing that lead to the overall value of the business. In the beginning, you might have to take free podcast appearances. You might have to take free content, do free content for other people to put on their platform. You might have to do partially free products for somebody else to leverage their audience. In the beginning, you're going to have a lot of invisible costs that eat up your time. And if your only asset is your time, then that actually costs you because that's the only thing you have to generate revenue in the beginning until you build up your catalog of stuff, whatever that stuff is, whether music, songs, or whether it's products, whatever it is. So I don't want to go into too deep of all these concepts. The next one we talked about is the belief, the motivation, the why, and the desire. The reason I separated passion out is because if you look up the etymology for passion, it means to suffer. Okay. What I mean here is that you need to have a desire that is so high that even when you're not making money, there's no immediate reward. There's no dopamine hit when you put out your first video and it gets 2 views. There's no dopamine hit when you put out your product and nobody checks the webpage for it. You get 10 people that check the webpage and leave and your bounce rate 60%. That's going to discourage a lot of people who are not excited about their product and about their business and about the vision they have in their head. And that will stop a lot of people from the outside from continuing because they're going, oh, I'm just losing money. I'm wasting time. They don't understand that that's the seed planting stage. In the beginning of your business, you need to plant seeds. Plants do not come from nothingness. Plants come from seeds. If you're not going to plant the seed and put it in the soil and wait for the soil to do its thing and water the plant and spend time with the plant, give it sunlight, why do you expect a plant? Okay, so the same thing with business. People think they can start today and immediately start getting into fast money, cash money, because they're sold these lies. It's called rags to riches stories. They're sold these stories by marketers and people who are in the business trying to persuade them to do something for them, like whether it's exchange money for a course or exchange money for some service or buy this shirt because this will get you from rags to riches. Whatever the thing is, the promotion services. Don't get me started on music promotion. The word promotion, if you guys hear the word promotion in business, music, anything, it's BS. I can guarantee you from knowing so much about marketing, there is no such thing as this promotion that will lead to dollars. Promotion is about becoming aware and being seen by people. That's the only result you get from promotion. It does not lead to money. It's not meant to lead to money. It's meant to lead to awareness. Okay, so the belief, though, and the motivation in your journey will help get you through those tough times. Like I said, there's going to be downturns where you question your own ability in business. There's going to be times in business where you're not seeing results. It's not because your business sucks. It's because you're doing a hypothesis that didn't work or you didn't try the hypothesis enough. In science, you have statistical significance, and that means that we have to do stuff enough times in order to determine that it's actually correlating to a result. So again, a lot of people are running their freelance services blindly. They don't have a structure. They're just doing stuff and it just happens. They don't have a how to because they don't know how to. They haven't built the how to. They haven't built a business plan. It's not a business. It's somebody just winging it. And that's the majority of creatives I see a lot of the time. They don't have a true business. This last variable and factor is the joy factor, because we could write all this stuff on paper. I've done it before when I was about to get my dog, my first dog. I wrote down, here's the pros, here's the cons on paper. Now you would think that that would make sense to help somebody make a decision. But at the end of the day, once I finally got my dog King, I was like, wow, the joy that I received from King is higher than anything I could ever put on paper. It doesn't, this pros and cons list doesn't even matter, because the amount of joy I got just by having King around was exponentially, geometrically higher than anything I could ever write on a piece of paper. So this is the part that where a lot of people are overlooking, is that the joy factor could determine if somebody takes less pay and is more satisfied with their work because they feel like they're leading into their purpose, why they were built as a human being. And so this is the factor that everybody has a different threshold about. But understand that, you know, in the beginning, this will be a big role in you continuing. Is if you truly have that desire, then you will accept less pay currently. And moving forward, you could grow that pay. But, you know, ultimately, that's a decision you have to make about your lifestyle, what you want and what you want out of life. But this is the variable that is very personal. But all these other variables are pretty tangible and quantitative. Hopefully this video helps you make the decision. I don't want anybody jumping overboard that doesn't need to jump overboard unnecessarily. Okay, I think a lot of people don't do these calculations and they're just making an excuse to get away from what they don't want to do. And sometimes in life, you got to do something you don't want to do in order to get what you want. Same thing in business. It does not mean you're doing everything you want to do every single day. You know, that's a lie sold to you by people who want to sell you, you know, these lifestyle courses or whatever the thing is. They're trying to sell you the BS because they want you to think that the other side is so much greener. So you should just take $10,000 out of your wallet right now, because when you get into real estate, you know, you're going to have such an easy time. And it's like, listen, guys, whatever the industry is, whatever the job is, whatever the promise is, whatever the promised land is, I want you guys to look at the facts and the analytics and then make a decision from history. Blind faith doesn't really serve much. Like I said, people believe in God because God created the universe you could actually see with your eyes. You could see the butterflies flying around. You could see the animals. You could see the sky. You could see the clouds. You could see the stars. Okay, Jesus created miracles before people believed in him to give their whole life away to the Christianity. Okay, so you got to prove yourself first, is my point, before you jump ship. That's my main goal for today. Thank you guys for listening. It's the BusyWorks Beats podcast right here at youtube.com/BusyWorksBeats. If you want to level up your skill set, go to busyworksbeats.com/premium. Peace.